Today we're talking about some really strong builds that you can use when you're fighting the Terminids. If you played against them at higher difficulties, you already know how crazy the bug swarms can get once the pressure starts ramping up. There's a good mix of light bugs, armored enemies, and heavy units like Chargers, Impalers, and Bile Titans, all trying to overwhelm you. The 4 builds I'm going to show you are all balanced to help you survive the heavy swarms, but also still have the firepower to deal with tankier threats that show up. Each one's built a little differently, so hopefully you can find one that matches your playstyle. Feel free to switch out weapons and stratagems depending on what you're most comfortable with. A lot of the primaries I'm using are just personal preference, based on what I find works well against the bugs, but you can definitely swap them out if you like using something else better. I usually play in squads with randoms, so I like running builds that can handle a little bit of everything by themselves without relying on specific team setups. That said, even in organized groups, these builds will still carry their weight. The first build is centered around the Recoilless rifle, and honestly, this thing is absolutely S-tier for taking out heavy targets. Usually one shot is about all it takes to bring down pretty much anything from Chargers to Bile Titans. It's also great for shooting streaker nests across the map and take them out without even having to get too close. The only real downside to it is that it does take up a backpack slot, but honestly it's definitely worth it. For the primary weapon, I'm running the Cookout. It absolutely shreds through swarms of bugs. You could also use the Breaker Incendiary here, and in my opinion it actually hits a little harder, but the ammo reserves aren't great. Since we're relying more on our primary in this build, I think the Cookout is the safer pick, so you're not always starved for ammo. The secondary weapon is the Grenade Pistol, which is super useful for Terminid missions. It's great for quickly closing up bug holes or finishing off groups of bugs without wasting too much ammo. For grenades, we're using the gas grenades. These things are insane for crowd control. If a swarm is rushing you or you're holding back an objective, you can just toss a couple of these down and buy yourself a ton of breathing room. The gas disorientates them, damages them over time, and usually leaves them weak enough to clean them up pretty easily. So between the Cookout and gas grenades for swarms, the Grenade Pistol for bug holes, and the Recoilless for heavy targets, this build pretty much covers everything you'll run into. And the best part, you still have 3 extra stratagem slots to pick whatever else you want. Personally, I like to roll with 3 more red offensive stratagems. I'm usually running something like an orbital napalm strike, which is insane for clearing bug breaches, mega nests, or defending objectives, the 500 kg bomb, which is a solid all-arounder for smashing heavies or clearing swarms, and then something like the orbital rail cannon strike, which can be a quick and reliable way to delete Bile Titans before they become a problem. But honestly, you can swap these out for whatever you like. The core of the build is strong enough that the rest is pretty flexible. Once you get into a rhythm with this loadout, it feels super solid and is really hard to beat, able to balance clearing swarms of bugs and taking down heavy enemies. This next build focuses more on dealing with the swarms of bugs, where the last build had a bit more emphasis on taking down tanks and heavy enemies. It leans into fire and gas, which is easily 2 of the best ways to shut down swarms in this game. The 2 main weapons you're building around here are the Torture primary and the Stalwart support machine gun. The Torture is a close-range flamethrower that's really good for area denial. You can basically coat the ground and choke points with fire, burning any bugs that try to push through. Even after you stop firing, enemies that walk through the flames will keep taking burn damage, making it easy to pick them off before they reach you. Our other weapon is the Stalwart machine gun, which is really good for dealing with bugs at a bit more of a distance. The Stalwart's actually so strong, and it absolutely melts light armor enemies, especially if you crank the fire rate all the way up to max RPM. It does a really good job of mowing down bigger groups where the Torture might fall off a bit. With this build, you'll be swapping between the Torture and the Stalwart depending on the situation. If the bugs are right on top of you, the Torture's really good for locking down a choke point. If they're a bit further out or coming in bigger groups, the Stalwart can be a bit better for clearing them out fast. These 2 weapons work really well together, and having them both gives you a lot of flexibility. The backpack stratagem we're running is the Dog Breath Guard Dog. This guard dog adds a nice extra layer of defense on top of everything else. It sprays gas at the enemies that get close, helping to slow them down, disorient them, and make them easier to finish off. It's also great for catching bugs that sneak up behind you while you're focusing on the front, giving you a second to react and deal with them before they become a bigger problem. For grenades, I like to run thermite grenades with this build. They give you a little extra coverage against heavier enemies, so you don't have to fully rely on your stratagems, especially if something like a Charger shows up. I like having that extra coverage, especially since the rest of the build's more focused on swarm clearing and crowd control. That said, gas grenades also pair really well here if you want to double down even harder on area denial and keeping the bugs off you. For the secondary weapon, just like the last build, I like running the Grenade Pistol again. For stratagems, I'm running the Orbital Napalm Strike and 500 kg Bomb again. I know I'm mentioning these a lot across these builds, but they're just really strong for what this setup needs. The Orbital Napalm's great for nuking a mega nest, shutting down a bug breach, or locking down objectives when things get messy. And again, the 500 kg bomb is perfect for clearing out heavy enemies, or just wiping out a huge swarm. That said, again, these slots are really flexible, and it's really just whatever you like or want to run here. This build's focused on slowing down the swarm, locking down key areas and burning through anything that tries to push on you. It's a ton of fun to use, and once you get the rhythm down with the Torture and the Stalwart working together, it feels really satisfying. This next build focuses more on explosive damage and raw firepower. It's built around constantly hitting the bugs with grenades, heavy weapons, and whatever else you can throw at them. The core of this setup revolves around the grenade launcher support weapon and the supply pack. The supply pack's the real MVP here because it lets you resupply ammo, grenades, and stims without having to call down extra supply pods. Having a steady supply of stims means you can heal up whenever you need to, recover from mistakes, and keep pushing forward without having to slow down. It basically just lets you be more aggressive without having to worry about running out of stims. Your main heavy hitter is the grenade launcher Stratagem. It's amazing for dealing with swarms, pushing back big groups, and chipping away at heavier enemies when you need to. You can spam grenades into the group and completely wipe them out before they even reach you. It's also really good for closing up bug holes quickly without having to rely on your secondary weapon. For the primary weapon, I'm running the Breaker Incendiary. It fits the aggressive style perfectly. It hits really hard up close, and it's great for when bugs get too close and you don't want to risk hitting yourself with the grenades from the launcher. The ammo reserves are a little low, but since you're running the supply pack, it's not really a big deal here. For the secondary weapon, I actually like running the Ultimatum with this build. Normally the Ultimatum's biggest drawback is its low ammo reserves, but again, the supply pack completely resolves this problem. It gives you a strong backup option if you need to quickly create some space, close up a Bile Titan hole, or deal with a tougher enemy before they can overwhelm you. For the grenades, I like running thermite grenades again. They give you another way to deal with tanks and heavier enemies without relying on your stratagems completely. Gas grenades would also be really strong here if you want to stack even more area denial on top of everything else. Both work really well with the supply pack since you could just keep throwing them whenever you want. For stratagems, you probably guessed it, again I'm running the orbital napalm strike and the 500 kg bomb. That said, these slots are still really flexible. There are a lot of other good options and it's really just whatever you want to run. This build's all about putting out as much explosive damage as possible and keeping the bugs from ever overwhelming you. This last build focuses on using the Autocannon as your main damage dealer, almost like a primary weapon. It's a bit of a mix between the first build with the Recoilless rifle and the last build with the grenade launcher. You're leaning on your support weapon for most of the work again, but the Autocannon hits a lot harder and it can deal with both big crowds and heavy armored bugs on its own. It gives you a really well balanced setup that can handle pretty much anything the bugs throw at you. The Autocannon also has two different firing modes, letting you either fire standard explosive shells for big single target damage, or switching to flak rounds for clearing out crowds. The only drawback is that you are vulnerable when reloading, and you will need to reload this thing a fair bit. The Autocannon does reload in two separate clips. If you still have some rounds left in the first clip, the second clip reloads fairly quickly, but reloading both clips from completely empty takes the longest, so you really want to be careful about running it totally dry. Just like the Recoilless rifle, you want to make sure you reload and get ready before jumping into the next engagement. For the primary weapon, I switched it up and went with a sickle. It's awesome for clearing out light armored bugs and absolutely melts shriekers. That said, the Breaker Incendiary is a great choice if you prefer it. And since you're relying heavily on the autocannon in this build, you don't need a huge ammo reserve for your primary anyways. For the secondary weapon, again, I like sticking with the grenade pistol. For grenades, I'm running the gas grenades on this build. Again, they're just really good for slowing down waves, creating space, and softening up enemies. Besides the autocannon, the next stratagem I'm running is the expandable anti-tank. These things are honestly amazing. The cooldown is super low, and it drops 2 rockets each time. You can pretty much call them down constantly. Once the pod lands, you can drop your autocannon for a quick second, grab the rockets, and quickly take out whatever heavy enemy you're dealing with. After you fire off the 2 rockets, you can just pick your autocannon right back up. It can be a really smooth way to deal with chargers, impalers, and even Bile Titans. I usually throw them down around objectives or places where I think I might need them later on. You can even get cheeky and throw the stratagem ball right at the charger. If it sticks, the pod will come down right on top of them and sometimes take them out without you even needing to fire a shot. The low cooldown is really what makes these things so strong, and it adds a ton of extra flexibility to the build. For the last 2 stratagems, again, I'm just running the orbital napalm and the 500 kg bomb. They're just really strong all around options, so feel free to run whatever you like. This build is all about putting out big damage. It's a great setup if you like a slightly heavier playstyle that can still handle big crowds and tougher enemies. So those are the 4 builds I wanted to show you. They're all built around being able to handle the heavy number of bugs you're going to run into, while still having the tools to deal with things like chargers, impalers, and Bile Titans. If I had to pick personal favorites, I'd probably lean towards the Recoilless build and the grenade launcher build. Both of these are super reliable and flexible and just a ton of fun. That said, all of the builds are solid and you can easily tweak them depending on what weapons or stratagems you like running. Let me know in the comments what builds you like using against the bugs. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to leave a like and subscribe. Until next time, thanks for watching.